Good afternoon, everyone. If we could gather just for a moment for this wonderful celebration. And as we begin, if we could just take a moment of silence to honor and recognize the ancestors that are lying rest here, whose presence we honor now. Amen. The beauty of this space is that even in the silence, you hear the life that is moving and breathing all around. That this is not the end of our stories, but those that rest here, their stories live on. And there are so many stories that are here, some of which are in your brochure, and we could not even get all of the stories of the ancestors that lived wonderful and beautiful lives. But today is a beautiful moment in history because it is a moment where we as a community come together to honor their stories, and the contributions that many have made to Cary, to Wake County, to North Carolina, and even to the United States. I'm grateful for your presence here. But I'm particularly grateful for the presence of Sister Sally Jones, who is here. If we could just give her a round of applause. It was because of her vision and her tenacity and her passion that pushed us, kept on pushing us to be able to get to this moment today. And she is a living legend that is among us, and we are thankful for her presence here and thankful for her many contributions. This land that we now stand and sit upon is sacred space. It is space that we honor, and it was a community effort coming together to understand the value of those who rest here, those who lie here. As we work together as a community, the connections that were made, the stories that were shared, the love that was shared with those working on the project, it was just a beautiful sight. And I honor that today. This is not the culmination of that work, but in fact, this is just a milestone along a longer journey, a pathway of recognizing the former slaves and pioneers, the veterans, the businessmen, the clergy people, the teachers and educators who call this space their final resting place. And as I said, this is just the beginning of that work. As we journey through, we were able to identify those that their space here cannot be marked by a marker, but we know their names. And we still have some work to do because we need to honor their names so that people hear their names and know their stories as well. And it wouldn't be possible were it not for the relationships with the Friends of Paige Walker. We value their leadership and their contributions to this. Particularly, I have to say thank you for the beautiful relationship and connection with Barbara Whitmore and Peggy Von Solk, who allowed us to come together and do the fun and hard work of research. Research is a lot of work. To the members of Cary First Christian Church, whose ancestors lie here, many of whom are here today. Particularly, I want to honor, though, Sister Barbara Ingram and Sister Marilyn Carney, who organized us and got us together to hear those stories in order for us to write them down. To the Town of Cary, to Mayor Weinbeck, to the council, to all of the experts, Katie with the planting of the trees, to Jillian White, to Virginia Johnson. The list goes on. Michael Vernell, who helped us, and cleaning and organizing the monuments. The list goes on to all of the people who came together to make this moment possible. I say thank you. And then as we look around to see those of you who are gathered here, some are residents of the town, others are residents of Glen Eyre, who find this space as sacred space. And find this space as a place for us to honor, not just today, but ongoing, to honor the stories of those gathered here. I say thank you to all of you. We do not take your presence here lightly or for granted. And I can say that even though it is cloudy today, the ancestors are showing a ray of sunshine, knowing that their stories still matter today, knowing that there are those that are interested in hearing about the World War I and World War II veterans, knowing that there are those interested in learning about Arch Arrington and the businesses he established and the fusion politic network that was established here in Cary, North Carolina. The ancestors are looking and smiling down, knowing that this sacred space is not just a final resting space, but this space is full of life. Look at the birds flying in the air, the trees that are growing, and the plants that are blooming. It's a living space that brings us together to continue to do the hard work to ensure that our lives matter, and that our lives are not just a mark in history, but our lives are moments of legacy that ensures that we live on even when that date is put on our monument. And that's what we're here to do. To ensure that those that are resting here live on, but also to ensure that the connections that we make among each other, that they live on as well. And so I am grateful to share with you that this project was more than this brochure. This project was a beginning of a blooming and budding relationship that ensures that the love that we share among each other as a community lives on beyond this day, but into a brighter future. So thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Brickhouse. That was wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. It's such an honor to be here with you today. I'm Barbara Wetmore, by the way, and I represent the committee that put together the walking tour brochure that you're all holding in your hands. The committee was made up of volunteers from Cary First Christian Church and the Friends of the Page Walker, and I'd like to acknowledge them by name, if I might. They were George Bailey, Pat Fish, Jimmy Gibbs, Susan Reeves, Peggy Van Scoik, and especially Marilyn Carney, Barbara Ingram, and Carla Michaels, who, along with myself, dedicated many hours to researching the cemetery and the lives of the people lying at rest here. We had help from others along the way, and we thank them. They are listed on the back of the brochure. We want to say a special thank you to the remarkable Sally Jones, whose amazing knowledge and memory filled in many gaps we uncovered in our research. Yes, we're going to applaud her every time we mention her name. She is really something. What we learned during our research is that this ground we stand on today is a significant, sacred, historic place. The land itself has a story to tell, having been owned at one time just after the Civil War by a white circuit minister from Craven County who traveled to and served in the Cary area. It is this minister who conveyed the land to the African American congregation at that time. The story of the land is important, but it is the people resting here who have the truly significant stories to tell about Cary's African American history and its citizens. Their struggles, their perseverance, their values and aspirations, and their contributions to the development of an ever-growing little town by the railroad. The details of these lives are too many to share from this podium, but just to give you a broad sense of what we found along the way, let me briefly share that here you will find the first African American businessman and community leader in Cary. founders of the Cary Elementary School for African American Children that went on to become Kingswood Elementary School. Businessmen, farmers, and laborers, church founders, leaders, and supporters, community organizers, large landowners, educators, veterans of foreign wars, free and formerly enslaved African Americans, and people of multiracial backgrounds. You will see grave sites of prominent families and grave sites of unknown persons, and you will walk upon ground where known and unknown persons are laid to rest with no grave marker to indicate where. There are 160 unmarked grave sites here, and in our research we were able to put names to many of them, but there's still more work to do, as Reverend Brickhouse pointed out. We built on the research that Miss Sally Jones had done before the wonders of the internet, and that was no small effort, I can assure you. We invite you to learn about the lives of some of these Cary citizens from the brochure we put together, and to follow leads in the brochure to further information that can be found on the church's website and in other resources. Our deep hope is that the Cary community will come to know the significance and sacredness of this cemetery and will care for it and carry its stories for generations to come. In a few minutes, I'm going to call Mayor Weinbrecht to the podium to speak to you. Before I do, I'd like to express how fortunate we are to live in a town where local government, private citizens, and church members can work together to preserve our history and to honor the lives of all our people. I'm going to close with a verse from an old spiritual we found posted at the entrance of the historic Oberlin Cemetery in Raleigh. As I read this, I encourage us all to consider what it was like to be an African American in the late 1800s, worshiping and burying loved ones on this very land we stand on today. I walk through the churchyard to lay this body down. I know moonrise, I know starrise. I walk in the moonlight and I walk in the starlight. I'll lie in the grave and stretch out my arms, and I'll go to judgment in the evening of the day. And my soul and thy soul shall meet that day when I lay this body down. Thank you. It's been a privilege to work on this project. And now if you'd welcome Mayor Weinbrecht.
Thank you, Ms. Whitmore. This is a beautiful day, even though it's cloudy. It is a very beautiful day, and I'm honored to represent the town of Cary and the council, many of whom are here. We have Jack Smith on the front row, Councilmember Yalu, Councilmember Ed Urha, and Councilmember France very much wanted to be here. He still struggles with operations on his back, and he still recovers. So thoughts and prayers, please, for Councilmember France as he continues to work with the back issues. I've lived in Cary a long time. I first moved here in the 50s, lived here in the 60s, went away for a decade, the decade of disco. That's a good decade of this. Came back in the 80s, and I've been here ever since. I remember in the 50s and 60s spending a lot of time over at Hillcrest. My uncle lived right next to the cemetery. I can't tell you how many times I passed this place and never knew it was here. I belonged to the church since 1989. Cary Presbyterian, close to here. Passed this place many, many, many times. And I never knew that there was a sacred, historic ground right here in Cary and all the history that was here. And so to restore this, preserve this, was not only important, it was necessary. It is something we had to do. This is an important part of Cary's history, not only because of the loved ones from First Christian Church are here, because historic members of Cary's first settlers are right here in this cemetery. This is a big historic landmark. So I am grateful and so appreciative of all the groups and all the people that came together to bring us to where we are here today. That's a very important milestone, but as Reverend Brickhouse said, we're not done. And the town's not done either. We're your partners. We want to continue this. This is a very important place for us. So thanks to all of you for caring and for being here and helping us get to this milestone. And this is a great day to cut the ribbon, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So at this time, I would like to invite the representatives from First Christian Church and representatives from the Page Walker. And we're going to cut some ribbon and invite, I don't know how we're going to arrange this. Are we going to do it from this side or the other side, or facing out? All right. So if you want to get in position, or you can stay right where you are. It all works. So thanks, and let's cut this ribbon.
All right, yeah. Cut.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.